Do you believe everything that you read on social media? Well, if you do, then you'll know that now is the right time to sell your entire whiskey collection, because the entire whiskey market is going to fall down and burn and be destroyed in this big fuming ball of fire because whiskey's doomed because certain bottles are falling at auction. Now, I don't believe everything I read on social media, and I think this is a really interesting subject to cover on this channel. And I started about making a video about starting writing my research for this video, and I thought this is a big subject, it's so nuanced and there's so many different facets. So we're going to break it down. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos about the current market in 2023. They're going to be relevant going forwards. If you're a collector watching this after this video has just been released, this is going to be relevant to you too, because we're going to really try and break it down into sort of what are the parts of the market and how does the market work. Now, the first thing that we need to do in this sort of series is we need to look at the transactional nature of this. And by this, I mean that there are a certain amount of things that are objective and a certain amount of things that are subjective. Everything that we're going to talk about, or a large part of what we're going to talk about in the series, is going to be subjective, because we're looking at human transactions, as in it is humans buying these bottles and it is humans selling these bottles. So broadly speaking, it's very subjective, but we can try and put this within various different economic frameworks or theoretical frameworks. So the first thing that we've got to do is look at the mindset of the people who are buying and selling these bottles, because they're obviously ones that are either bidding or not bidding at auction and choosing to sell or not sell at auction. Now, the two terms that we're going to cover in this video are growth investors and value investors. So we're looking at types of people. We're going to ignore the people who are buying whiskey to drink, because broadly speaking, I don't think they're buying the bottles that we talk about on this channel, or if they do, they're going to be doing it in the minority. So let's take a look at what a growth and value investor is. But before we do that, if you're enjoying the video and you like whiskey and whiskey investment, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now, as I've said, growth investors and value investors are not specific to the whiskey market. They're concepts from the field of finance, and specifically in the context of investing in portfolio management. Now, in simple terms, what are they? So growth investors follow growth. They look for, if you look at this in a financial position, they look for companies that are expected to grow at an above average rate compared to other companies on the market. So you're looking at people who are following the growth. So they might buy a stock like this, the Morgan Stanley Investment Fund's US Growth Fund C. In 2020, this was the world's best performing fund and grew at 110.08% in 2020. That is insane growth. So you can kind of see why people would come in there and buy when you're on an upward trend, because the trend was like this. It was the best performing fund in 2020. Why the hell wouldn't you get on this train? And to be honest with you, it doesn't take much, I don't know, much in the way of a cognitive power to sort of see that might increase your profits, because you're sort of growing up here, you're growing on an upward trend. Now, value investors are people who they categorically do not look for companies that are growing on this sort of trajectory. They look for sort of stocks that have got a lower than average price to earnings ratio or a price to book ratio, or yield high dividends. So very simply speaking, and we've mentioned this in other videos, these are the investors who look for value that is not necessarily recognized by the market. So and again, if you consider the growth investment, the dumb investment, oh, this is going up in value, I'm going to buy it. The value investment is that pure analytical breakdown and connoisseurship almost, because you thoroughly understand the product. Now, what on earth has this got to do with whiskey? Well, it's got everything to do with whiskey, because I would bet a lot of money that the people who are spouting doom and gloom on social media at the moment about the market are the ones that are growth investors. They've been coming in and they've been buying every modern release that they can get their hand on a ballot. They're buying all the no age statement crap. And yeah, not necessarily crap, but the Night on Earth in Scotland, the harmonies, the additions, all of that sort of stuff. Some of them are great bottles, don't get me wrong, but why were people buying them? They were buying them because we were following the trend and they're following the herd, because the market was broadly speaking doing this, and you can stick the folios in there as one for good measure. Now, there is a risk with doing this. There is a risk for buying those bottles and stocks that go up like that, because do you know what the worst performing fund in 2022 was? It was the Morgan Stanley Investment Fund's US Growth Fund C. So that same fund that went up 110% in 2020 dropped, I think it was down like 56% in 2022. So what suddenly went from being the best performing fund went to the worst performing fund as a result of people and a result of actions. You know what I mean? Like, and it's the same with bottles, you know, like Folio 1 went from sort of £15,000 down to its lowest at sort of like £7,000. It's back up to averaging about £10,000 now. You know, if you're going to follow those thrills, you're going to have to accept some of those falls, because if you look at value investors, you know, if you've been buying high age statement bottles that are perhaps undervalued by the market and not necessarily being sucked into this greater fool theory of investment where the bottles are going to go up, so therefore I'm going to buy it, and of course this is always going to carry on forever. Ask anyone on, you know, any whiskey collector with any decent bit of understanding about the market, should a no age statement bottle of whiskey released in 2015 in an edition of 2000 that's been sold over 1,000 times at auction already with an RRP of £250 be selling for £15,000, when from the same distillery you can buy a 1958 vintage 25-year-old that was released in 1983, so it's been out for 40 years and has been sold less than 100 times at auction, and they're only £5,000. You know, you can't just, when these markets correct, and I think that's very broadly speaking what's happening in the market now, we're seeing a huge correction. The bottles that are correcting are not the bottles that have been accurately priced by the market, as in that 1958. It's the bottles that have been overpriced by the market, as in a lot of the no age statement nonsense that's falling like crazy. And again, you can throw a lot of the Springbanks in here. Springbanks have been falling like crazy in recent months. But what was driving their prices? Why were they shooting up? And if you can't explain in your own head why that bottle was growing in value, can you see something that the market has missed? You know, like, so for instance, we covered this Dalmore Luminary on the channel a while ago. You know, it wasn't an expensive bottle, but you know what? There was a lot going on about it, and there was other elements to it in terms of like it being a series, this, that and the other, blah, 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 blah. But some of these modern releases that have been coming out, as far as I can see, there's been nothing there. And this is very true for the new distilleries that are hammering out releases. There's nothing there. It's just a new limited edition because we need to sell some whiskey, and you know what? People buy limited editions rather than core ranges. So let's make a new limited edition and a new limited edition. Why the hell should it triple in value overnight? What's causing that growth other than people seeing that growth and going out and buying it themselves? And the danger with that is that when people see those, you know, those are the people that buy when it's going up, but they also sell when it's going down. So there we go, people. It got me animated. I'm sorry, but you can't just say that the whiskey market is in a dire state, because broadly speaking, this correction has been needed for a long time. And I think it's a good thing.